Arthaus.
This is Arthaus for a third time. We're with Logo. We're talking about Normie meme prison. We're talking about how school can not only destroy your intellectual mind, but also your romantic wishes, your dreams, all that stuff. So, Logo, first of all, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Just chilling. Things have actually been great for me during the quarantine. Life is great. So it's kind of like odd for me because a lot of people are having a really rough time, but it's been a really good time for me personally. I've
Yeah,
been I've been digging it, and I think this year's been pretty good in general. And every year's just been kind of better than the last one, at least for me. So things are looking
yeah,
up.
yeah. Ever since like 2016, things have gotten better. Just at least more entertaining. Like financially for me, physically, all that stuff. Like I'm just getting better. If you ain't getting better, you're doing something wrong. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way of looking at it, right? Things should your life should improve. That's part of the problem, right? Of the school system is creates this sense of like people kind of romanticizing their high school days or whatever, and like can this you like end up thinking that or like college was like the peak time in your life, and then everything after that is kind of just like slow decay towards death, and it's like this cult of youth, but it's like a cult of youth like in an asylum.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't even get to be free at the time. Like I don't know. I remember how much it sucked. Like I wasn't like people like will like be like, oh, like I'm gonna throw Logo in the locker like a nerd because he probably got bullied all the time or whatever. It's like no, I got along like pretty well. Like I had a lot of friends. I didn't really have any like social problems in school. I just like hated the fucking drudgery of it.
Yeah.
Like that's part of why I like had friends is because like I was like in the honors classes or whatever, but I was like all of these kids are like stupid, like they're not like any different really. Like
Yeah, they just can do the work more diligently.
they're just like more they're just like are willing to do homework or like I knew kids who are like really like much smarter like in a real life senses. They just like were like like I'm gonna go into like HVAC and like work with my dad. Like I don't need to know any of this shit. Like I'm not going to college. Like this is all just a waste of time for me. And guess what, like those kids like bought houses when they were like 22 or whatever. So it's like who's really winning?
Who's laughing now?
Like what do you like who learned the best lesson like earliest, right? Like if you got sucked into this fucking meritocratic system and then you get like you don't realize until like you graduated and in debt and like fucked over, like look who's like those dumb electrician kids and like the remedial classes start looking like geniuses.
Yeah, making 120K a year. Just like they have a
Yeah,
legit skill, family. They're like 25, just chilling already. And then the guy's like, I'm in my fourth year of graduate school, and I'm fucking tearing my brains out, and I'm 80K in debt.
yeah, and you're like studying something that like no one's gonna like the value on the job market is like negligible. Like you could have studied communications or like some bullshit major like
Yeah,
C student Chad who like is then just like networking maxing and like
yeah.
just like getting an internship or whatever.
I mean,
Like I would say
that's
it's like
yeah,
I tweeted that like the way of looking at the university system in America is like the best way of looking at it is a job fair, like a really expensive job fair that you
mm,
pay for like to get to go to, and then like all of the classes are basically like interest groups that you're a part of. You're like whatever your major is, you're like I'm like in the chemistry interest group or whatever, pretty much.
yeah. It is just it's such a backwards, outdated system now with all the internet stuff. Like the people that want to get literature degrees, they would be, and like people that are, like classical degrees stuff like that, like, and not something that's for a job. Like you could just read the books on the side and like really get into them as your hobby, and then
Yeah,
just
and
get
like
a job in something else.
and there's like a lot of like if you just want to like attend like really good lectures on these sorts of things, like like there's tons of lectures you can go for free and like watch all of like Northrop Frye's lectures on the Bible like whenever you want.
Yeah.
It's like eh, I did a lot more like reading and like kind of studying in a way like when I worked this like shitty office job after I graduated than like I was at some points during college, just because like my actual like work day took up like maybe like 2 hours of like actual work and like
Mhm.
then like 6 hours of like pretending to do work. And like in that time I was just like like reading PDFs that I'd like download on my work computer or like listening to like lectures and stuff. So it's like
Yeah, you said a while back, you're like, wage slavery isn't that bad if you know how to like just like clown it a bit.
Yeah, if you're not trying, if like you, I mean, it's like, well, it depends, man. Like if you're trying to like work your way up through like the fucking hierarchy or whatever, and you're like trying to like really make it there, like then it probably does really suck. But like
Yeah.
I never thought that's what I was gonna be doing. Like I just took it. I thought of it as like me like scamming like a major company to like pay me to do nothing all day, and that's
To
like
just
how I
read.
treated it.
Yeah, just
And
to read books.
I did that for like a while, and I like saved up enough to be able to start doing like what I want to do.
Nice. Did you so you're out in Texas now with all that and you're able to escape from New York featuring Logo. How
That's
did
for real.
are you settled in fully? Are you like you Texan now?
Yeah, I love it down here, man. Like I every time I go back up to the Northeast, I just don't know why people are like doing this to themselves. I'm just like why are you doing this to yourself? Like it cost like you're paying so much for like so much worse conditions, and
Yeah.
like I don't know. It was nice to like grow up there as a kid, like in nature and whatnot, but it like I don't know.
It,
I don't
it
think I would do it in the future.
it seems like one of those things where I mean, I've gone to North Carolina. I've only been to New York City once, and it seems like one of those places where like you say, like as a kid when you're still very idealistic and you haven't gone like super deep in the city and you can go out with like your Honeycrisp apples and just go to the lake and whatnot and hang out, like it seems like a really good place. But then the second you have to like become an adult in that area and start interacting with all the other adults, you know, do the job stuff, then it becomes kind of just like a waste.
Well, it's like there's not really any jobs there at all, at least where I grew up. So it's like if you're not like in a trade, like if you're in a trade, you can like find work because like you're going out to do work in places, like especially if you're like doing construction or like anything like, you know, electrical or like plumbing or any of these sorts of things, like you can more feasibly like live out there.
Mm,
But or like otherwise you're just commuting to like one of the major cities to like work like in what like insurance, finance, real estate, like the real like the
yeah.
like in the Northeast they have like what's called the Knowledge Corridor, right, which runs from like New York City up through like Hartford all the way to Boston. And it's kind of just like this long sprawl of like corporate headquarters and stuff like that. And
Mm,
that's where like most people actually work, and then they like just commute out from these
mm,
like small towns to that.
mm.
Uh, and but like even that's like kind of like all those people are like telecommuting now, right? So it's like
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, remote work is so strange. It's going to be so strange. People are going to be like, why the hell am I even commuting? Why the hell do I get in the car and go all the way to the city?
that was the best part of my job was when I got to like work remote like after my apartment fucking burned down.
Oh,
They
yeah.
just like they just like gave me a laptop and just like let me work remote. So then like my like 6 hours of like pretending to look like I was working, like I had to try like way less hard to like
Yeah.
seem busy, which was kind of nice. But at the same time, while I was doing that, like we were actually just training like an AI to like get rid of all of those jobs. So like none of the job that I like used to have like doesn't exist anymore. Like after I
Really?
left, like they never hired anyone to do it again because it just doesn't exist as a job anymore. It's all automated.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
gonna happen to a lot of stuff, like
Yeah.
a lot of that type of work that people don't even think of, like kind of like lower level office work.
Yeah, like the comfortable, like you get your degree, you're comfortable, you're making your little like 80K a year, and you're like, oh, this is easy. I don't have to do anything. And then boom,
Yeah, it's gonna be
cut.
gone.
Yeah, cut immediately. Now, when it comes to like when it comes to that thread that you wrote about school and about how like it like cuts you off from your sweetheart and whatnot for global capital. But you're talking about high school, right? Not middle school or anything like that. Like mostly.
Yeah, I'm kind of mostly just talking about like the general like kind of life plan or like life path that's like prescribed and like as like a kind of ritual in like American society. You kind of consider going like people go to college for what is called the college experience, right? Like it's
Hmm.
like this rite of passage, and
Hmm.
like the same thing sort of happens like even if you look at like just like imaginative reproductions of like American youth, like you'll have like the prom scene and things like this, like
Hmm.
all of these things sort of have like a like mythological power to them as well, like as like an initiation ritual into American society. And like that has become more and more like pressed, like even just like ideologically. I remember they changed mid-year when I was in high school, calling like standard classes, they stopped calling them just like standard level classes, they started calling them college prep classes, because the idea is that like the standard is that everyone's preparing to go to college of some
Oh,
sort, like whether
geez.
it's
Yeah.
a community college. But it's like I always thought like that less people should go to college. Like college should be like a kind of
Yeah.
like like that's how it works. Like in like Germany, especially, they have like a lot of vocational schools. Like people learn mostly go to vocational schools, and like the amount of the people who go to like the colleges is like a very like it's like a minority compared to
Yeah.
like just the glut of our system. Like it's like absolutely absurd how many people are going to school. It like diminishes it for everyone though, because like
Mhm.
even if you're like one of the people who's like wants to go like take it seriously, like you're not catered to. You're catered. What the whole education is being catered to is like the lowest common denominator.
Yeah, when college first came into existence, especially in the Americas and with in the colonies and whatnot, it was for a very few select amount of people that want to, you know, ascend intellectually and become scholars in specific areas and whatnot. But it wasn't for every person to go in there and try to become the same, try to become scholars and whatnot. 99% of the people were perfectly fine being farmers, laborers, artisans, craftsmen, all that, all whatnot, and there's no push at all to like come into college en masse.
Yeah, I mean, like the original colleges, like you go back to like talk about like Harvard or whatever as one of the first ones. It was to train ministers, it was like to
Hmm.
train like priests. But like when it came to like literacy, like in the public, like this was handled very locally. Like even in my town, which has less inhabitants in it now than it did, obviously, in like the 18th century, like the early 18th century, it had like five schools, like five different like primary level schools
Mm.
throughout the whole town. And this was like a town of a population of like maybe like what, like 500 people at the time. And there
Hmm.
were five different schools. And now it's like there's just like huge like there's just a huge public school, and like
Yeah.
this whole public school like tied into like the regional network of things.
Yeah. There's like it's like the centralization of education in a sense.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, this historically like happened in the 20th century, like in like and the people who are like the person you really want to read, or like if you want to get into like the what's so fucked about the current school system, is John Taylor Gatto.
Yeah.
He's just done a lot of research on this, but it's like you can just like go read like the original documents for like the General Board of Education, or the General Education Board rather, that like the Rockefellers funded. And like within it, it's like, yeah, we're not trying to like train like people to become philosophers. We're not trying to like create any intellects here. Like the whole point is to just like keep people at like the socioeconomic position that they're already at, just to like replicate like the
Yeah.
existing social structure, which is pretty much what it does. Like what we've added with like the kind of college board like sorting mechanism of like SATs and stuff was originally this kind of meritocratic notion of like like whoever has the highest scores get into the best schools. But ironically, the reason why like affirmative action type things, or really like quotaing for like demographics in schools comes
Hmm.
about, is because there were like too many Jews getting into the Ivy League schools. Like that, like that's really like why they changed it. So like they were like they started including like all these other criteria, but what it really was to like maintain like the school culture of like not being like 25% Jews when it's like uh, a school for like white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, right? When we're
Yeah.
talking about the Ivy League schools, at least in
Yeah.
that time, like that's like late 19th century, probably early 20th century, started
Hmm.
instituting that sort of shit. But like now it's just like it's like the who the schools are really for, who's paying like the full tuition and whatnot, are like the Chinese kids.
Yeah.
Like at the big schools, they just like take in all these like foreign kids whose like parents will pay like full tuition just to give their kids the clout in their home country of like having an American like elite education. But
Yeah.
those kids are the ones who like do fuck all. Like they're the ones also like paying for like people to cheat for them and stuff like. So there's like this whole like sub economy in the university system, which is it's like really funny. Like if you really like the best grift ever is like just like however you can take advantage of like foreign students.
My one of my friends' brothers, he went to Long Beach in or USC in Southern California here, and he said there'd just be these like packs of Asians, and they would just spend all their money on like upgrading their Subarus and upgrading their like their trick cars, and it was just they would just all pull up in unison and whatnot, and they'd all get out, and they're all clearly like Chinese, Japanese, foreign exchange students. It's
Yeah,
really funny.
we had like the Korean brigade, and they were always looked like super cool. They're always like wearing like the freshest like fucking streetwear in like New York. You know, they were just like look like we would just say like, you know, they came to school to like go to like it to school in New York just to like smoke outside and look cool. Like that's pretty much like what they would do for like 4 years and just like play League otherwise.
Oh yeah,
So,
just
so
always playing that League of Legends.
smoke cigs, like play League for like 4 years and just like cheat on all your tests, and then like you go home and then you finally have to get a job. Like it kind of sucks for them too, but you know, like they treat it legitimately as just like a vacation, which is probably the way that most people really treat college, like in their minds. Like I don't
Yeah,
know, it's
I
kind of
mean,
just like a vacation.
the weird part about college is that you go and you experience like unbelievable amounts of hedonism, unbelievable amounts of freedom. You have your parents' money or whatever. You have all this stuff like that you don't have in the real world, and you kind of live in this like little fantasy for 4 years. And you're like, oh yeah, blah blah blah. And then you get in the real world, you get your office job and whatnot, and especially someone not like you know, not someone literary inclined or someone who's like trying to cheat the system or learn new things on the side or whatnot. Somebody who's just gonna go in there and do their job, like they're gonna realize very quickly, like, oh my god, this sucks. This is awful. And then they want to chase for the weekend because that's when they can kind of relive that little glimmer of
Yeah,
college.
you can see sort of like how like this sort of like ritual uh it like replicates itself, right? Because like
Hmm.
I don't know. I never had like the appeal of like I think a lot of the appeal of college also is that you can kind of like reboot your personality. It's like I'm like starting over in this like new
Mm.
circumstance, and like I can be a totally different person than I was in high school. I just remember
Right.
like freshman year there was like always this kind of like off-putting like overextension of people trying to like introduce themselves as if they're like introducing like a new persona of themselves. Like
Right.
there you can kind of sense that there was like it was like, yeah, you definitely weren't cool in like high school, but like you definitely want to be cool now, like, you know, like you think that like you're like, all these people don't know anything about me, so I can just be a totally new person. And like I think that has like a strong appeal to it. But like for me, like I didn't really like I did all my I did a fuck ton of like my hedonism or whatever in high school, you know. So it was like I wasn't like, oh man, now I can finally like drink beer or whatever. It's like I don't know. I hung out with like kid like bad kids, you know. I hung out with
Yeah.
so I didn't really see that as like the appeal, but I definitely see that happening to like other people. They'll grow up in a kind of like helicopter parenting households, and they'll like strive really hard in school to like get into like a slightly better school than other people, maybe not even necessarily like a top tier one. And then
Yeah.
they get to school and they realize that they like have the ability to make their own decisions like with what they do with their time, and then they just
Yeah.
like, you know, become like fucking huge ass stoners. Like the biggest stoners in the world are the kids who like first started smoking weed like in college, like
Oh
every
yeah.
time.
I remember there's a like there's all these Indian kids that went to my school and would all have like the running shoes and the jeans and like the polo shirt and just like, you know, the horrible style, like I just care about my academics sort of feel. And then they go to college for 2 years and they come back, they're like in streetwear, they're super stoners. It's hilarious. It's hilarious what it does.
Yeah, and like and then it's like, you know, it turns it into that like weekend, the even the weekends in college are like where you first, or like I don't know, the whole notion of like summer break and like the weekends and stuff, these are kind of like this like artificial calendar of like it's like the release valves for like the pressures of like the modern world, where
Yeah.
you know, you're everybody's working for the weekend, as a great poet once said.
Yeah, it's a weird system. It is a weird system, and I think kind of the start of the trauma that the system brings in is when, you know, you touched about this, right? When you have this like ideal life kind of in your mind that you want, but your parents and the schools and your administrators and everything, they're telling you you need to go to college, you need to do this, you need to do that, and it causes so many people just to break up, cut connections with people they really care about, close friends, girlfriends, all that stuff. It just sliced away immediately when you decide to pick which university you need to go to.
Yeah, to get like a little like Marxist, I guess, in a way. You can also think of like this sort of process as being like the creation of like class solidarities. Because like if you're the type of kid who's like not going to college, or you're going to go to like a community college or whatever, like you're
Hmm.
not supposed to like be friends with the kids who are like going to be going to college, right? Because like you have this like splitting where there's people who stay around, and then there's like the people who go to like these schools, and then they like make new friends, and then they like the kind of sort of part of the bonding is like talking shit about like the small towns you came from or whatever. That
Yeah,
always like put me off when I was always like from like one of the more like podunk or smaller regions at my school, and like
yeah.
people would be talking about like how much they hated like their hometown, and like all of like the people in high school who like didn't understand things, like weren't like woke and smart, and like couldn't get into like the cool epic university or whatever. And it's like,
Cool, epic based university.
yeah, and it's like what they're really doing is like I now see these people like literally becoming like BuzzFeed reporters or whatever. So it's like I can see like the genesis. Like it's like it's funny when you like know these people personally, like when you're in like that kind of class, because like there's like specific people, I could probably name them but I won't, that I went to school with, that then later on are like now like blue checks on Twitter, who have like way less followers than me, like, which is also very fun to note. But like I remember when they were just like bitching about like coming from like upstate New York, and like like people not like understanding them or whatever, and now they like
Yeah.
write articles talking about like how these people are Nazis, like the people in high school that like ostracize them or whatever.
All that screams to me is just trauma. Just like you did not, you got a lot of things inside your brain that you just haven't cleared out properly.
I mean, it's like that's how you make like bonding like happen. Like this sort of stuff is like the like I would say that like the school system is like it's like an imposed trauma, but like like that's what pedagogy is, right? Like
Yeah.
you're kind of they used to like hit you to like make you learn stuff, and now it's just like more complicated. It's more like psychological. It's more like social pressures than it is like kind of like physical like
Hmm.
fear. Like, but you know, you'll get sent to the principal if you try to go to the bathroom without raising your hand. Like this sort of you're like being trained like a dog.
Yeah, dude. When you look back and you break it down, you realize like, whoa, that was so weird. I had to raise my hand for the bathroom. I had to.
See, what's fucked is like I just always thought this way. Like I got into trouble all the time when I was a kid because I was always like, this system's like stupid. Like and I
Yeah.
would like argue. Like I remember like in elementary school, like I was like argued with the principal about like something, like in class. Like it just like destroyed the class for the day because he was like really involved. But like looking back on it now in my memory, I'm like 7 years old or something, and I'm like arguing with the principal about like whether or not I have to like stand for the Pledge of Allegiance or something. I don't even remember what I was arguing about, but I would just do this all the time. Like, I'm just like a disagreeable person, and like I
Yeah.
don't like doing things I don't want to do. And I was always like, kind of like doing my own education, I suppose, like
Hmm.
because I grew up in like a family that's like, full of like teachers and values education for its own like merits or whatever. So it's like I didn't need a school to tell me to read books or to like
You just
have an
read
interest in
books.
things. Like I just was already doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you break it, like, looking back too, like the amount of books that you have to read in school, it's pitiful how little you actually have to
No one
do.
even reads those though. Like
I know. Yeah.
when I was in high school, I did a report, right, for like a class I was doing. Like we had to do like an investigative report. So I was just doing an investigative report on the class itself, like how well it was like doing it. So like because this is like me trolling like the teacher that I didn't like, pretty much just like trying
Yeah.
to write a report about how shitty they're doing their job.
Yeah.
So I was like did an anonymous questionnaire of like everyone about like how much of the readings they'd actually done, or like blah blah blah. And the only person to respond that they'd like read all of the readings in the class was me. Like I was the only person in the entire class who like actually like did like read all of the stuff that was assigned. Just because like I would read like whatever. I would read it just out of spite if I thought it was stupid, just to like then write an essay about like how stupid it was.
Yeah. Yeah. You can, because you're just reading inclined, and then everybody else can just. I think Spark Notes is like the demon looking back. Like the fact that
Well,
you
that's
don't
part
have
of
to
it.
read, the fact that you don't have to read, and the fact that the actual material that you're getting tested on and forced to write up, it doesn't require you to actually read the book or form coherent thoughts. It's criminal.
I
Absolutely
mean,
criminal.
my dad was like literally a teacher. He was like a really good one though. Like he used to like win awards and stuff for like he was like a really good at his job. But like
Yeah.
that's not the case. Like that everyone has cases like that where like inside of this like kind of shitty institution there are like good people like who do a good job, but that's not really a justification for the whole system itself
No,
because like
it's
they're
exceptions.
they're doing a good job actually kind of gives cover for all these other people who are doing a shitty job. Like, you know, you kind of like use their authority or like their goodness to kind of occlude like all of the fucking perniciousness that's happening underneath it. But
Yeah.
as my dad said, he made like a very clear distinction in the time when like he would he used to like cater like his tests and stuff specifically so that if you only read the spark notes, like it would be you'd be fucked because like
Mhm.
you can just very easily see what the spark note says about a book and then just like ask questions that you wouldn't be able to answer
Yeah.
having only read the spark notes. But then it gets to a point where he was just like, I was just happy if anyone read even the spark notes. You know, like
Yeah.
the upcoming generations, like they literally can't read a book. Like they won't do it. Like and they don't have to because if the whole point of reading a book is only to like answer certain questions, then if you're like min maxing that, like it's way more efficient to
Yeah.
like
Yeah. I
because
totally get that.
they don't have like a love of reading books themselves. Like they just want to like play the game. They're just playing the game, and that's why
It's
like
yeah.
it kind
Yeah.
of inculcates like a negative feeling, I think, towards like any sort of like I don't know intellectual engagement at all. Like people now all think that like anyone who like likes reading, like quote unquote, like likes doing homework, pretty much. Like
Yeah.
that's like the linkage, and and it's like, yeah, no, like I fucking hated doing homework, but I like reading books. You know, like you don't have to think of it as homework, and it's like
No.
that's the real problem. Like even right now, you've got all the kids on quarantine. They're taking their classes online now, and like as I was saying, with the kind of like the fakeness of like the office work, like it's the same with like high school. Like you could actually do your entire workload of a high school day in probably like an hour if you're not like an idiot, I guess.
Yeah.
And so kids are just doing that now, and then they're like going back to playing Fortnite, and like their parents are there and they can like see this. So like right now we're going through like even like a time where like it's just becoming readily obvious to anyone who has like eyes to see that this whole system is like bullshit.
Yeah. This
At least
whole
for
thing.
like kids who are capable, but like at the same time, the educational outcomes of kids in the public school system are almost wholly determined by like the quality of their parents more so
Mhm.
than like the quality of the institutions that they're in.
Mhm.
Like that's like
Oh yeah,
there's
like
like brilliant studies on that,
the
but
parent, your living situation back home is infinitely more important than the actual schoolwork you get. I mean, you could min max your way out of any schoolwork, but if your parents don't support, if your life situation is shitty, it takes a really, really gritty and determined person to get through that and actually succeed.
yeah, and it's like kind of an absurd thing to be like, well, it's the state's job to like fix bad parenting, but like this is a like they were going to have that Harvard discussion about like making homeschooling illegal for this reason, pretty much, because like the way that they were framing it is that like kids who are homeschooled are being like abused by like not being put into like normal society and like you know like
Yeah.
but there's really like there's no real good evidence for that. Like a lot of like people were just homeschooled for centuries. Like the smartest people like that we look back on for the most part were like people who had like tutors and stuff. Like the whole educational system will change back towards that just as this era of like 20th century mass production kind of dissipates into the internet and like kind of decentralized education in general.
Oh
Like
yeah. One
what
on one.
that's going to do is
Yeah.
it's going to leave behind what this whole demographic of people with like shitty parents, like generally like, you know, like poorer people. So there will be some like kind of like stratification there. And the problem politically with that is that people that like are going to like frame this as like a case of like white nationalism essentially, right?
Yeah. I mean, and then obviously too, like the people that can't read a book, and then the people that want to like viciously want to read every possible, Western canon book possible, still have equal voting rights, still have equal everything in that sense.
Well,
So
that's the idea. It's like the school system is to like teach you how to vote, like how to be a like voting member of society, and like that being like the goal, like it means that like you have to be they're trying to get you to like this absolute like middle level of intellect. It's like the big like bell curve chart, like everything's designed for like the peak like 100 IQ like midwit essentially,
mhm.
like just getting everyone to like this position of like knowing enough, but like not knowing too much.
Yeah. Uh, honestly, like the best, the weirdest part about school is that like a lot of the people that I would just interact with and talk to and whatnot, like they would not be developed in any other way except they'd just be really good at academics. They wouldn't do sports or do nothing, but they'd be really good at academics, and then that means they're perfect and they're amazing and everything's good. It just seems like that's a huge flaw. Is that you're not creating developed humans in all aspects. It's just creating people that can min max multiple choice questions.
Yeah, it's like that's what it's made for. But like, what are those people really good at? They're really good at like following orders. You know, they're really
Mhm.
good at like getting their work done in a timely manner. And it's like they're going to be great office drones someday.
Yeah. There's the famous quote. Or I don't know if it's famous, but I see it popped around all the time. Is that the smartest dogs are the easiest to train?
Yeah, but what if there's like dogs that are like smart enough to like fuck with
Yeah.
you and like while
Yeah.
you're trying to train them, right?
Yeah.
Like
Well,
what do you do with
yeah.
them? Are
That's
those dumb
yeah.
dogs? You know, like that's like maybe they need to give them some Ritalin, right? Like
That's
maybe they
that.
just have ADHD.
What's that? There's that graph that we always poke around where it's like the 90 IQ and the 130 IQ shaking the hands, and then like the 115 IQ just like the angry Wojak.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to that though, because I like, as I was saying, like, you know, these like kids who are like quote unquote the dumb kids or like being told that they're like dumb. Like, if you're like, what is intelligence, but like making like, I don't know, like good choices, I guess. Like a lot of those kids like are doing a lot better than the ones who like kind of fell for the fucking scheme. Like, you know,
Hmm.
when I go back to my hometown, like the people who are doing the best are like kids who like were in like the lowest level classes, like got C's, didn't give a fuck. And then like, you know, they usually went into like a vocation of some sort and they're like good at doing stuff if they see it like reflecting their own interests. So like, you know, they'll work really hard at like a company if like they're making good money or whatever, especially like there's like it's like, you know, family trade stuff is like a big one because like I knew a bunch
Yeah.
of kids like, you know, that they just like are doing what like they're just working like, you know, with their dad or whatever.
Yeah. What matters? What doesn't matter at all is like what game you play. That doesn't matter. What matters is like how are you playing the game that you're working with, right? Because if you're like, obviously, if you're like low IQ and you're a scumbag and you're a failure and you failed at school, like clearly you're not doing a good job at life. But if you're lower IQ, you didn't really do well in school and whatnot, but you're well off now, it literally doesn't matter what happened in school. It literally doesn't matter what anyone thinks. You are winning at life in your domain easily.
My favorite version of this, right, is like the kids who I knew who are like the weed dealers or whatever. Like, and it's like if you really think about it, though, like what they're really doing is like they're just like being entrepreneurs, right? Like
Yeah.
they started basically like small businesses in their time in school, and they made a bunch of money. And then most of those kids ended up moving to like Colorado during like the weed boom or whatever. And
Hmm.
like now they just like have like again like you know like what really counts as intelligence. Like I feel like they like kind of outsmarted the game a little bit. They just like didn't want to do homework.
Oh, I mean, a lot of them probably way smarter than the kids that actually went to college and whatnot.
Yeah, it's like people use the term like street smarts or whatever, but it's
Hmm.
really more just like kind of like analysis versus like experiential knowledge. And it's like what they want you what school really is like trying to create in you is like to turn you into like a great and like analytical thinker,
Hmm.
but that's really like only useful for a certain level of like the economic strata. Like that's like
Yeah.
mostly like middle to upper middle class, like kind of like office jobs. And it's like that's not like those are unnecessary or bad or whatever, but
Yeah.
that's just like not the majority of the human population are like
Well,
inclined that way.
well, the problem with analysis is that you're not creating anything. You're just looking at what other people are doing and what things are happening around. But the experiential people, those are the people that are creating. Those are the people that are going forward.
Yeah, I mean you can be creative like analytically, or you can like analyze things from like a new angle, and like you know that can be like the spur for some sort of like other creativity. So like I don't know if I would like divide it on that lines, but
There's nuance definitely, but
yeah, there's definitely
roughly,
like nuance, but like roughly, like yeah, it would be a lot better. Like, but then like you know, you can talk about some of these people, right? They like go to like really good schools, they like get really good grades, they get a really good job, and they like can't cook themselves dinner. You know, like they have to like always like order out food because they can't do like really basic human life tasks.
yeah, that's sad. That's sad right there. There's a see, there was a dealer at my school, and he was really smart because he kept it really low key. Like he used like WhatsApp and Signal before everyone was still doing text. Like he was really on his shit. Now he's got a boat. He's living in like Long Beach now or something. Like he's chilling. And he didn't. I think he went to Chico State for like half a semester, and then just like dipped out immediately. And you know, now
Yeah,
he's
like I know a
popping
bunch of
off.
kids like that. Like a lot of them got in on the like solar panel boom that's been kind of going on. Like
Yeah.
there's like companies like contracting out like solar panels and stuff. Like that's like one of like the only fucking big industries from where I grew up. Like these days, it used to be like an industrial hub, but that hasn't been the case for like because like the Rust Belt really starts in like where the Industrial Revolution started in America. Because like those are like the first mills to go under, right? Were like the ones with this like legacy equipment from like centuries ago. There was literally like a lens cutting factory nearby that
Mhm.
shut down in like the 70s because they were still using fucking like water power from like from like the river
Yeah.
to like run themselves. But so so like that's sort of the area I grew up in. Like it's like already been like post industrial for like decades,
Hmm.
and it's like just like a lot of heroin, a lot of drug use, a lot of drunk driving. Like it's not like the best place to be for someone in their like 20s. Like I don't know, it's kind of rough.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I mean, it's probably good you left the whole
I didn't really
Northeast
have a
area.
choice, you know.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I went to New York, but like I would have gone somewhere eventually. There's literally just like nothing for me there,
Hmm.
and for a lot of people, that's like what a lot of people do. But again, this is kind of feeds into like the whole problem, right? Where like I've like lost that kind of network that I had. Like it's kind of nice to like, you know, like have your old friends around. Like I'm still good friends with all the people that I was friends with there, but like I'm not there like they are. Like they're still like in the same environment.
Yeah.
Whereas like I'm the furthest away out of like anyone in my family. Like I've moved like the furthest from like the Northeast.
Hmm. Have you been able to like make new friends and get kind of a network in Texas?
Yeah, yeah. I'm like, see, this is like, you know, people think I'm like some cringe nerd or something, but like, no, I make friends everywhere. People love me. Like, I was hanging out with my
some
friends this weekend.
cringe, some cringe nerd.
Yeah, some DSA person probably would have called the cops on me because I was like playing beer pong and grilling with my Texas friends, like not following social distancing. You know, criminal shit.
Dude, that term just like it's starting to turn just like a trigger word for me where I'm just like I just don't want to hear that social distancing word. It's the ultimate Karen term. That's what I think.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I like to think sort of. I was thinking the other day about how quarantine's kind of like turned all of America into high school in a way, and like people are now like hall monitors. You know, it's like
Hmm.
you're supposed to only be in like you know you're only supposed to be in your little classroom, like your apartment or like your house, and like you can go out to certain places, but like you have to wait in line. You know, everything's very much more like organized than it was
Yeah,
before.
yeah, yeah. Organized, much easier to control. And honestly, to anyone, all right, no one's gonna hear this on the live stream because nobody can hear me. But to anyone that that is a hall monitor and sees somebody outside not wearing a mask and calls the cops at them, you are the lowest of the low of humans. Lowest of the low.
Yeah, well, you know, that's a whole type of person that's again like inculcated in like the high school situation, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you have like the people who become kind of like buddy buddy with like the administration. Usually they're like the good kids who like don't get into trouble,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like they're the ones who are like have like little memes or like inside jokes with like maybe like the principal or whatever, like the kids in student council. They're the ones who like work more closely with like the adults that are like in charge of the
Yeah,
prison.
there's something sinister about that looking back. Like the people that were really like buddy with the administration, not just like a quiet like teacher student relationship where you're just like good friends with like a particular teacher, but with the bureaucracy of itself.
Yeah, yeah, like not with like the teachers, but with the administrators.
Yeah, yeah. That's the that what- that's uncanny valley territory right there. Looking back, all those kids were strange. All those kids
Yeah,
were
but
strange.
all those kids now are like those are the kind of kids who like become like journalists.
Those are the kids, journalists, or they're the guys that end up in like the State Department.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like so that's more like my major point, and like I guess like when it comes to like the whole like adolescent peer bonding thing I was talking about, like there is like some like science to this. Like if you're like thinking like, when you're going through like adolescence, like you're experiencing like totally new chemical reactions in your brain, like no whole
Mm-hmm.
like totally new hormones like related to like courtship and all of this sort of shit, like
Mm-hmm.
sex in general. And
Yeah.
like so obviously it's going to be like a much stronger reaction than like when you habituate yourself to like doing this like over and over and over again, and like you've kind of like already built like the neural channels in your fucking brain to like how do you mediate this like experience. So
Mm-hmm.
like that's sort of like how they try to get you to like think in the term and like about this in terms of like any other sort of consumerism, because
Mm-hmm.
it's like like you're just testing it out right now, like you're not intelligent enough to like make decisions about your future. Like you definitely shouldn't be getting married right now. Like you got to like build up your career, and then like you got to like find like try out a few things, and like you
You
gotta
gotta
try before
sleep
you buy or
around.
whatever,
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
much. And I don't know, I just think that that's like generally bad advice.
Yeah, yeah, I would say so. 100%.
It's
Like,
like I don't know, like personally I could look back and be like, I didn't like take myself too seriously when I probably should have been, like in some of my relationships at the time, because like I like was like, well, I'm gonna go to college and then I'm gonna like become a whole new person. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
like that's when my real life is gonna start. Like this is all like training mode level
yeah.
before like reality. But it's like there is no stark divide there. Like
No.
you you have one life
It
and it's
starts
all
when you're it's
connected.
yeah, it starts when you're born and it ends when you die. There's no yeah, the phases are definitely they're made to they're artificially constructed to be phases rather than just the greater whole itself, looking at
Yeah,
all,
it's like
all in the picture.
it's a ritualized like narrative that like you're supposed to identify yourself with. Like you're supposed
Hmm.
to see like you're like you're supposed to like. I never gave a shit about any of them though. Like I didn't want to go to my own graduation. I just felt like it was like I was like I'd rather like hang out with my friends. Like I don't give a shit about like
Hmm.
sitting in like a fucking robe and like getting a piece of paper or whatever. Like it all just seems like beside the point to me.
Oh, it was so funny. Were your robes rented?
I don't even remember. I think they like handed them out to us or
Yeah,
something.
that was the funniest thing to me. It was so like it just felt so fake because you get the robe, you put on your hat, you do a little walk around, you come back, you just take off your robe, put it in this big like pile, and
Yeah, and then you do what you wanted to do anyway, which was like go drink with your friends, right? Like it's like
yeah,
that's like the real. That's like
it's like literally just for the administrators to have a nice picture and be like, look at this.
yeah, I guess so like for your parents to like like
Yeah,
mark off like this you can put a
yeah,
whole line, like make a slideshow of all your moments at like the points of like ritual
yeah.
enactment into society, and like
Hmm.
I don't know, it's
Make the little memory map. Yeah.
yeah, and then I'm being like that's you, and it's like that's just like five pictures, like it's not really the
Do you want to see
story.
me, Mom? I have the real pictures from a few hours later
Yeah,
on
it's
my
like
phone.
you don't want to see those.
You don't want to see those. Look, all right. So if there's a kid right now, he's listening to this right now, and he's like, "I fucking hate school." Right? Would you tell him to stay with his sweetheart he's got right now, and then just go do something else?
I would say like you should treat like any relationship that you have like as seriously as you can, because it's like a serious thing. Like I think the kind of flippancy that people like, I think it's kind of
Hmm.
like a cope. I don't think anyone wants it either way. Like people are like kind of like the PUA, like red pill manosphere way of looking at things is
Oh,
like, oh no, like the actual happiest people in the world are just like people who like sleep around all the time or whatever. But then you see in real time like all of these people like eventually becoming like fucking trad cats, like fucking Roosh or whatever, where
yeah,
they're like, oh, actually, this isn't like a satisfying way of living at all. And like, I wish that I was just like happily married, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, like we figured all of this out a long time ago. It's just that we've like destroyed this structure. And that's like who destroyed the structure for like what purposes, or like has this
yeah,
been destroyed? And it's like really like for the interests of like sucking out as much resource value from you as possible.
yeah. I mean, if you're single, you're not looking to the future, and if you're not looking to the future, you're looking for the short term.
Yeah, and you'll
You're
buy a
only
bunch of Funko Pops.
yeah, just buy a bunch of Funko Pops, and even then, like you could just tell, like the polarity that a lot of like the Funko Pop guy's relationship that he has, it's not serious. It's not like no matter how long they've been dating, it's not serious. It's not real. It's totally fake. It's totally like it's totally around base values.
Yeah, it's like it's just weird. It's just like weird in
It's
general.
weird.
I don't know. I feel kind of like an alien sometimes because like I didn't go through like the normative processes. Like I'm pretty young to be married, and like pretty much like I would have been earlier. Just like it like didn't really matter too much. Like it's kind of like if you've been living with someone for long enough, it's like the real like breakup is if you're gonna like if you move in with someone and you have to move out. Like that's essentially like that's like getting married and getting divorced. That's like
Yeah,
the
that's
real like in like common law terms even like this is how it would have been recognized by like you would have been like like an unmarried peasant or whatever, but you would have still like had to adjudicate this in like common law courts or
yeah.
whatever. So this idea that like we've just like not doing that anymore, that like these rituals like don't exist anymore, or this whole structure doesn't exist anymore, like everything's totally new, and like everyone's happier now because they can like I don't know, go on Tinder, I guess. I don't know. I just don't believe it.
It really like when you break it down to the minutia, it really doesn't make any sense at all. Like yeah, like you said, like you're happier because you can go on Tinder and then order Uber Eats after, but you could have had a family.
Oh, yeah, you could have had a home cooked meal,
Yeah, you
like
could have had a home cooked meal, nice wife, little garden, dog, but
yeah,
nah.
it's but then you might want to like own property instead of like renting it, and then you like might like produce like your own food instead of buying. It's like all of it
Hmm.
like it's all to like enculturate you into being like a fucking atomized consumer drone. Like that's really like what you're learning, and that's like the whole point of all of these institutions is just
You
to
know,
like
uh, it seems like
put
the
you in this
essence of
prison.
yeah, it seems like the essence of everything. It's like, are you going to be self-sufficient individual or are you going to be a consumer drone? There's just it seems like lots of the issues that pop up just kind of tilt one way or another in that sort of little matrix.
Yeah, I mean, it's fucking rough out there, man. Like, I wish if there's like people listening to it who are like younger, I don't know, I would say like don't really like listen to too much of the advice you get from people
Hmm.
because they're mostly are like especially older people, they have no idea what the fucking landscape is anymore. They watch
No.
TV, they watch TV, they watch broadcast TV,
Yeah.
like
They
they
don't
don't
know.
understand shit. Like
Yeah.
whatever they say is like a depiction of like their nostalgia.
Yeah.
Like
It might have good intentions, but it's not true.
yeah, you just gotta like fall. Like I always give like the fucking cheesiest advice and shit, but honestly, I think I as I get older, the more I think there's like wisdom and kind of like just like cliches and just like basic phrases people say all the time, but they don't mean. So it's like like just be yourself, just like follow your heart. Like this sort of stuff sounds like really dumb, but it's actually like a much deeper answer than you're gonna get
Yeah.
from if someone's gonna like what plan your life for you and like tell you what steps to take. Like then
Yeah.
you're just being a drone again. Like you haven't learned anything. Like then just go to school, man. Just follow the path everyone tells you to follow. It'll turn out perfectly.
It will turn out perfectly. Well, that's
And then
what I want you to
then
think.
someday you'll realize like you don't know what you want anymore, and like you don't know yourself. You don't know anything. Like you've just been
Yeah.
following orders your whole life.
Yeah.
And it's a
Disaster.
fucking brutal thing to wake up to. I've seen it happen to people. It's like
And
fuck.
it's better to get that out of the way when you're like 17 than it is when you're 32 in a city with a girlfriend you don't like.
Plus, it's
And
like
job great.
it's so much more romantic to have your existential crisis when you're like 15 and like thinking about nihilism than it is to be doing this when you're like 35. Then it's just embarrassing. Like, you're supposed to have done this already.
It's really like it's yeah, that's a good point. It's like a stunted adolescence throughout
That's
their
really
whole
the story of our times. This is what Wyndham Lewis said in The Art of Being Ruled. I think it's in like an addendum to The Art of Being Ruled. You can only find in the Black Sparrow Press edition. So I'd recommend checking that out, guys. But it's about Peter Pan as like the myth of the modern society.
mm.
So it's like like the eternal adolescence, like in
Wyndham was an
Neverland.
Wyndham was an essayist, right? Kind of like Emerson.
Yeah, he wrote. I mean, he did a little of everything. He wrote like plays, he wrote poetry, he wrote
Mm.
novels, he wrote essays. He was just like all over the place.
Cool. Cool.
He also
Yep.
painted.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
he was a good painter.
Oh, there we go. That's a
Yeah, be more
Renaissance
like
man.
that. Be more like
Yeah.
that. Just like do all the things that you have any interest in. Like you don't have to like this sort of like specialization Olympics is like
No.
totally outmoded. Like it used to have like a purpose, but these days like you're going to be doing like if you want to do anything, like you're going to be doing a lot of things.
Uh,
You want to be useful.
at this point, it is just a divide and conquer tactic to make you not self sufficient. You know, like you have to know how to do a little bit of everything that's useful to you. You can't just you can't just totally go fully blind into one domain and then try to outsource everything else or try to you know try to rationalize that you don't need these other key parts
Oh
of your
no,
life.
but what about like comparative advantage, man? Right? Like everyone's got to only do the thing that they do best because then we all do that together, and it's like increases the wealth of society. Like, oh, you're destroying like liberal capitalism here, man. Oh no.
Oh, a 20-year-old on a podcast just dismantled liberal capitalism
Yeah,
with an
gonna have
offhand
to shut
comment.
down the Fed now.
All right, let's go shut down the Fed logo. Um, before we hop off, right? I do want to say that you you've mentioned a couple times that you have a desire to like teach or like become a literary professor or literature teacher
That's
of
like
some
what I
kind.
wanted to do. Yeah, I wanted to go into, well, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. What I really wanted to do was I wanted to have a position in academia because that's really a cozy spot to have, just so that I could like have money to like be able to write.
Yeah,
That's really like I didn't really care about like teaching. I guess like I like talking about these things. I'd talk your fucking ear off about anything I'm interested in for free. Like I don't really give a shit about getting paid for that. But I just wanted to like that's like the coziest spot for a writer, right? Is to like just like have a very like low impact professorial career. Like that's sort of like
yeah,
the dream, right? But it doesn't work that way.
yeah. And you'd have to sucker up to the bureaucracy, and that would just be a hellish little experience for you, I bet.
Yeah, I mean, it's just also like it's just like when I was trying to do this, people were like teachers, they were like there's like no real interest in like doing the things that you want to do, like the way that you like reading books or whatever. It's like very like old school or whatever, and they'd be like,
Hmm.
you have to read more Foucault, you have to get more into like all this sort of like like race and like gender theory and stuff, and it's like because that's what sells, right?
Hmm.
That's the
Yeah,
selling thing now.
yeah. They want you to read. They want you to read race and gender theory before they want you to read Dante, and that
They
just
don't want you
says,
to they don't want you to read Dante unless you're going to read it through race and gender theory.
yeah,
Like and like
that'd be a trip. Is that a thing?
they certainly try, like one of the TAs I had when I was studying Dante certainly tried to do that. Like I remember she like crossed out my references to Ezra Pound and then she wrote like in a long comment and like ballpoint pen on the side about how he was like anti-Semitic and like how you can't like how it's like very problematic to like yeah. It's like even using the notion of a canon now or being like like, oh, these are the important texts, or like no, that was like constructed by like white men or whatever. It's like a totally socially, so like we're gonna it's like it's fucking a bunch of nonsense, man. Like the people don't even like to read, like they're
Yeah, they just want to have arguments, and they want to feel smart. They
no
want to just
they want to just be virtuous. They just want to tell you like how good of people, like how their opinions make them a better person than you.
yeah, just a whole bunch of signaling. Do you have since you can't do that, since you're probably not going to do the academia thing unless they just arrest everybody at
I
Harvard and they
mean,
just ask
like,
for
what's
new
the
people.
point? You just like do this now, man. Like, I don't know. I'm just doing my own thing. It seems to be working out pretty well.
Do you have an aspiration to like do some sort of like online or slash decentralized local sort of literature thing maybe in the future? Not now, but like 10 years,
I mean,
15.
we're kind of like working on some stuff with the Sudcast right now. That'll be sort of like that. It'll be like more. I think it'll be like more entertaining or engaging than like just doing like I don't know lectures on stuff. Like we're trying to
Yeah,
like innovate here in this space and
yeah,
like, but yeah, I don't know. That's like I just want to write and I want to like talk about these sorts of things
yeah.
and share
Well,
that and like that's all I really want to do. So I'm just gonna do that.
I will say with Sudcast, right? Like with Copbot especially, like even his like throwaway meme tweets, me just dunking on some blue check. Like I will just go research whatever he's talking about, and I will learn more about 18th century German philosophy than I would have ever read in like a in college or anything like that. So I
Yeah,
think you
it's
guys,
like a way of framing it to like make people want to know about it, right?
yeah,
Like that's like a major thing. It doesn't seem like homework, right? It seems like fun because
yeah,
that's like the real thing that's been lost is that this stuff is fun. Like it's like, I don't know, like it's like the fairy food when you're engaging with like really good literature. All the other stuff just like tastes like ashes, man. Like you can't go back. Like it's like a one way road, dude. Like once you like train your taste or whatever to a certain degree, like you can just kind of see through a lot of the garbage that's peddled elsewhere. Like they don't
Oh,
want you to like clear your head of a lot of trash and like demand better things because they don't want to give them to you. They'd rather sell you fucking Funko Pops.
they want to sell you Funko Pops and they want to sell you books about how Trump is bad that you won't read in a year because the whole news cycle it's based on the news cycle and the news cycle changes constantly.
Yeah, it's like also all that shit's like totally fake. Like the bestseller list and stuff is like all fake. Like literally, like the publishers have deals with like various places to buy up certain amounts of copies of things that they're promoting.
Yeah,
Like or when it comes to like politicians hitting that, they'll like have their like nonprofits buy up a huge quantity of like their own books and stuff. Like
I
it's
remember
literally it's all fake.
Jordan Peterson's book. Remember, like 12 Rules for Life or whatever. It was,
Yeah.
it was okay. It was like really basic, but like it did its job. Like that thing literally sold so many copies, and they just took it off the bestseller list.
Did they actually? I didn't
That
really like follow that,
he
but I
was
did
yeah
read that book.
yeah he just took it off yeah just took it off the bestseller list completely.
That's
And
really weird.
they're like the reason was like we can't have we have a weird deal with HarperCollins or Penguin Publishing and blah blah blah, just like some bullshit bureaucratic excuse, and then that was it. They just never mentioned it again. It was so strange.
Yeah, I mean, it's like kind of just like always been like that though. A lot of these like, these metrics are like a game in themselves and like a lot of people you can create like a total like Potemkin village like false front of like someone being like really popular and influential. Like they'll
Mm-hmm.
be getting coverage and like all these places and getting interviews or whatever and then they kind of just like disappear because it's all manufactured and like put together by like backroom deals of like publishers like doing synergy brand like cross brand synergy like we're going to promote this book here and you're going to show up here and do an interview there and
Yeah,
like and that feeds into like this larger news cycle and like all this
yeah.
stuff is like literally managed, it's like created. It's not organic.
No, and that was honestly probably one of the when that realization hit that a lot of the art, a lot of the literature, a lot of the stuff put out is like just marketing exercises and not actual like organic, interesting, deep thoughts. That's when I just got it's so cynical with the whole art world.
I mean, it used to be a little bit better. It's just gotten so much worse, like very swiftly. Like just because, like even like the alternative media that existed, at least when I was younger, like I always think of Pitchfork, right? Pitchfork was at one point like an independent like voice and like curator of like independent music for the most part, and like was
Hmm.
promoting a lot of stuff that was like done on like very small presses and stuff. I was like kind of like doing a really good job of like creating this like wider culture just by like putting things together and like having like a central hub for people to like find these things. But then like it gets acquired, like they start like doing like big festivals and they get big brand advertisements, like
Hmm.
doing working with them, and then eventually like the company itself gets bought out and then they like start change, like they want to promote certain artists in it, and it's like you can't give that thing
Yeah,
a bad review because they have like they're actually sponsored by Pepsi and Pepsi sponsors your fucking
yeah.
concerts, and it's like all of the it's a whole different world.
Didn't
Like
didn't Vice get bought out a while
yeah,
ago?
same thing with Vice. Like
Yeah.
Compat did a good interview with one of the guys who used to be like a Vice reporter. He's like gone pretty independent since then. He went into that a little bit, but yeah, like a lot of that, like these like now establishment media that used to, you know, be at least a little bit more interesting. The reason why they go to shit is because they become like complicit in these structures. Like as soon
Yeah.
as you get like, as soon as you let a little bit in, like they've got like leverage, and then eventually you're just like marching to the same as everyone else.
It is so funny to think that just a few years ago, Gavin McGinnis was part of Vice, and then now look at them.
I mean, yeah, I mean, but he was like yeah. If you, I was like, God, I was looking at one of the books Vice put out in like the mid 2000s, and it's like, holy shit, it's like the most. It's like not like Gavin McInnes was never even really that funny, but like the
Yeah.
amount of shit that like the type of he hasn't changed at all is the irony. Like he's
Yeah.
actually the same guy. Like none of his like real opinions have changed on anything. It's just
Hmm.
that like this whole this whole frame has moved beyond him, and so now it's like Vice is like canceling the founder of Vice.
Yeah, it's
And it's like a magazine called fucking Vice too. It's like,
yeah, yeah, and I mean, uh, like, honestly, Vice is such wasted potential. I don't want to go too much on this, so we got to wrap this up. But Vice is just
yeah.
wasted. Vice is just wasted potential. Like you see them, like they had the edgy, like look, you've seen those Vice documentaries with like 20 minutes. Like that concept is so perfect. They have like the edginess. It's all youthful and whatnot, and then they just go like establishment woke capital and just
Yeah, it
it's
was a big move in like I would say at like the beginning of like the Obama administration. The Obama administration is really when all of this stuff like hardcore solidified, which is like why I think, everyone kind of reacted in
with
like when
Trump.
we're now like seeing like the reaction to like that, like
Yeah,
absolutely stultifying time period. Like that was the fucking worst. Like I can't
yeah,
overstate that enough. But even like the Bush administration, it was like super shitty, but there was still like this sense of like an authentic like alternative media. But the Obama administration was where all of that alternative media like got sucked into the fucking
yeah.
hive mind.
Disaster. It was a disaster. Logo, do you have anything you'd like to say before we have to head out? Words of wisdom,
Uh,
whatnot?
buy my book. Buy my book, I guess. Yeah, buy my book. It's called
Yeah.
Selfie Suicide. You probably already have, and if you haven't, you should. And if you don't have any money, you can pirate it. I really don't care. But
I,
yeah,
I
and
will.
listen to Soodcast.
Yeah, do those two things. I will say, Selfie Suicide is a great read. It's pretty quick. I got through it in just a couple days, and it
I
was
personally think it was ahead of its time in a lot of things. Like I think a lot, like little small parts of it are actually like just happening now.
yeah.
In big ways.
The whole part. I forgot the there's the one character where they're like him Carrie Turnbull. Fucking love that name. Him and his date are walking and they're like looking at the guys at the cubes, and there's like the one like super insane streamer guy, right?
Yeah, it's basically Tifu.
Yeah, and he's just everyone's just watching him in this museum, and it's interesting.
I wrote that before Ninja did the fucking New York Times shit too. So I mean the New Year's Day fucking
Oh
thing. That was
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
like when Twitch streaming was still like not as huge as it is now, but it's obvious how things are going.
yeah. Oh yeah, bro. Logo, it was absolutely great to have you on. This has been Arthaus, and we'll be signing off right about now.